Frank's Red Hot is the perfect blend of flavor and heat, so you can use an entire bottle to make recipes like buffalo chicken dip or buffalo nachos, or even things that don't start with buffalo. Frank's Red Hot, I put that on everything.
Craig!
We were worried about thunderstorms. Thought the offense would move and that Utah's DBs were nothing. They didn't even need Zach Moss to get exposed like that in Utah. Just felt so rough.
No, they didn't need Zach Moss.
Not even close.
Not even remotely.
Not when you can throw the ball around. We'll get into that.
Yeah, I mean, that's, that's sort of the magic of football, right? Like, if you can throw it, like, who needs to run it?
Yeah, who needs the guy that you normally run 30 times a game? But anyways, this is podcast versus everyone. If it was up to us, we'd never run the ball.
Never.
And never.
And
I'm
never
Craig,
punt.
and we'd never punt. Never.
Never kick.
Never kick. Onside kicks every time.
Yeah, all that sissy stuff.
I'm Craig Powers. With me is Jeff Newser.
Hello.
It's just not as much fun to do this after losses, but here we are again.
No, it's not. Like, okay, so obviously, number one, we typically come out with a show first thing Monday morning. It's Monday night, and it was sort of like, I don't know, like, I think you were up for it. I was just sort of like, I'm trying to finish my Monday column, and
I was pretty happy we didn't. I was
okay, well, good. That makes me feel better because I was just like,
I went to bed at like 9:30. It was great.
Yeah, I mean, on the one hand, yeah, I mean, obviously, I want to talk about it. And one of the things I love about this podcast, and I think it comes through, is that I love talking about Coug sports with my buddy, and so there's a part of that was like, yeah, I kind of want to talk about this and debrief and decompress a little bit, but it was a little different than, at least for me, than the UCLA game, because with UCLA it was just like righteous anger, right? Like I was just pissed, you were pissed, we were pissed, like it was just like, it was easy to be angry. I don't know how you get super angry when it's clear that you just got your ass kicked by a better team.
Right.
Like that's, and I don't know. I mean, I maybe some other people are taking away something different from this. It doesn't seem like it in the comments of the stories that we've written. I don't think people are, sort of thinking, oh man, if we had just done this differently. I know that some people are picking on the Borghi thing. I suppose we'll talk about that, but I mean, that seems like, I don't know, man. I mean, when you lose by 3.5 touchdowns, I'm not sure nitpicking who's getting touches inside the red zone is maybe the way to go. So,
yeah.
Anyway.
Well, I mean, you can, be bummed about the red zone, but also they only got past the 40 4 times. So, like,
that's bad.
So I think a scoring opportunity, as Bill Connolly defines it, is having a first down inside the 40. They had four of those the entire game.
Yep, that's
of course
bad.
They only had 10 possessions as well. So.
Yep, and I know that was even less than what we thought, right? When we did the preview, we were
said
like
11 or 12.
11 or 12 and 10. It was mostly because of that crazy third quarter. Like that was reminiscent of what was it was the second quarter, right? Under with Houston,
right,
where they had the big long drive and held the ball for most of the quarter. So anyway, it just, yeah, I mean, they were pretty much dominated in virtually every way you can imagine getting dominated, and that's a little sobering. We haven't had that happen in a non-Apple Cup in a while.
Yeah, not for a couple years. Of course, in 2017, it was either they got their butts kicked or they
yes,
won. Like there was no in between.
Yeah.
So probably the 20. Well, even last year's Apple Cup wasn't that thorough of a whipping. Yeah. So that was the defense. The disappointing thing and the kind of thing that we were worried about in the preview when we were talking about Huntley, and he's improved his arm and improved his passing ability. They had done reasonably well against UCLA stopping the run, but it was the chunk plays in the passing game, and once again, Utah, just like UCLA, was just, passing and doing whatever they wanted in the passing game, really. Even drawing, even you factor in the stats, there was a couple, pass interference penalties in there as well. They were just not having any trouble against the secondary. Pressure was inconsistent, particularly on passing downs, when you're supposed to know they're going to throw. If you look at one of the nice things about doing this later is that and the nice things about being kind of an interesting game to people is that Bill Connolly did his advanced box score.
Yeah.
Basically, you can tell the story in that game largely based on how each team performed on passing downs.
Yeah.
WSU did a reasonably good job staying on schedule. Like their success rate was pretty high in every quarter but the second quarter, and that was obviously crucial. They blew an opportunity to take the lead on a turnover in the second quarter, and then they had they had some other good field position that stalled out, that in around the 33, and then Mazza hits his longest field goal, which, by the way, hey, we have a kicker.
Yeah,
I wish we never had to use them, but
yeah. I give him a shout out in my column as I was like, struggling to think of what we liked. I'm like, what did I like? Oh, hey, we hit a couple field goals and the punting was okay, and Travell Harris had some nice returns. So
yeah, we actually had
special teams. Let's go.
We had really good average field position. Compared to Utah.
Thank you for the average field position.
So yeah, this kid would have looked worse if not for the special teams.
Yeah, that's true.
Because passing downs, Anthony Gordon on passing downs was 7 of 16 for 79 yards.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Pick and sack.
Yeah, it was bad.
On the other side, Huntley was 8 of 11 for 111 yards.
Yeah.
On passing downs.
Yeah.
A lot of that is that 3rd and 15 when they got a 41-yarder.
Yeah, well, they converted. I think I counted it, and I don't even know if I got them all. When I did the recap, I counted them up, and there were 4 different 3rd and 11 plus conversions, and that was just on what I put on the recap. I don't know if that was all of them or if that was just most of the 3rd and long conversions that they had. And then there were some others where they went from, if I remember right anyway, the mind does funny things, right? When you're like, it was all bad, but I seem to remember some 3rd and longs that turned into some 4th and shorts, and then they converted a couple of those. So yeah, it was demoralizing. It was difficult. I'm not convinced that we were as close to stopping them as some of our fans seem to think with the 3rd and longs that they converted. I just got this sense that Utah was just sort of dicking around a little bit, and not in a, not in a. I'm trying to think of how to say this, like. Not like they were screwing around, but just like they were purposefully trying to make sure that they were taking time off the clock.
Right.
And I got to think that somewhere in the back of Kyle Whittingham's mind was the fact that 2 of the last 4 times we've played, we've come back on him in the 4th quarter. And he was like, I got to think he was determined not to let that happen again. And I know there's an element of playing with fire a little bit there. If you're like, run, convert 3rd and long, run, convert 3rd and long, which was kind of what they were doing, but they were doing it, it was
and
like,
it's not, those
were
3rd and 11s.
They had no problem converting 3rd and long.
Guys were open or
like
pass interference or whatever.
They weren't even really worried about it, and that's how you get those, 7.5, 8 minute drives, those crazy drives where it's like, there's just these soul crushing conversions. But the reality is it's not like they were making these ridiculous plays to convert, at those distances. I mean, they'd run and 3rd and long, and then somebody's running wide open, without anybody on the screen defending them. It's, It was hard to watch. It was frustrating. And I got the feeling Utah could have put up 50 if they'd wanted to.
Yeah.
If they had really pressed the tempo and really, pushed the ball.
Well,
and
Utah had 9 drives and they had scoring opportunities on 7.
Right.
The average is to have scoring opportunities on a little less than half of your drives.
Yep.
And they had them on that's like 77% or whatever.
Yep.
It's crazy. I mean, they had 9 drives and they racked up 526 yards.
When you've got a defensive head coach, they don't really care about putting up 50. They just want to win, and if it's comfortable, that's fine. But it's like, they really just want to win, and I don't think Whittingham cared one iota about, running up the score and rubbing it in on Leach. And
58 yards per drive.
Yeah.
They were doing well with their opportunities too. 5.43 points an opportunity. Man, that they just were really just doing whatever they wanted. And even when you're forcing those third and longs, you're feeling like the defense is doing something. But again, like it was just so easy for them to convert.
Yep.
On those third and longs, so it just didn't seem to.
Yeah.
That
should be our defensive motto. It feels like we're doing something.
Yeah.
But not really.
Well, if we go back to kind of how the game played out, the Cougs definitely in the second quarter, they got the first drive to tie the game. It was not chunk plays that you expect, but guys, they were working the middle. Guys were open. They were moving the ball. It looked like, okay, we're going to be able to, find some way to move the ball today. After the first drive didn't look so good, but really in the second quarter when the game was still, close, they blew some opportunities to get more points on the board, and that was that you had that feeling when that happened, just the way how it was, how difficult it was to move they just weren't getting those chunk plays that they've been getting all season. You kind of got this feeling when they blew those opportunities that it was going to be rough, because it just only seemed a matter of time before our defense was going to start giving up points.
Yeah.
And what really changed is WSU came up probably its best defensive stand of the day, stops them on 4th and 1, probably the best play of the day they did on defense.
Yeah.
And then I think it was Hobbs and Rogers. I can't remember who got that.
I think that's probably about right.
Hobbs had a pretty good game. They get the ball. I can't remember where it was. It was near the 50 plus territory.
Mm-hmm.
And only they can only muster a field goal out of it, and
it's
14-13. Utah has 3 minutes left. They go down and score, and then it's essentially like it.
Yeah.
I mean, when Utah got the field goal to start the second half after that 8-minute drive, that felt like all they needed.
Yeah,
and obviously it was, but you just felt like ugh.
Yeah. The stretch that really decided it was basically, I think, what you were talking about. You had, and we sit here and we say, we didn't have the chunk plays, but we did have some. Like, it wasn't, we weren't totally devoid of those the entire game. That sequence you were talking about, so the drive before the 4th down stop, we had gains of 14 and 19 through the air, one to Renard Bell, one to Des Patman. We got all the way down to Utah's 34, so we went from our own 25 to Utah's 34 in about 5 plays, didn't face a third down. Like, that was a good looking drive. Yeah. And then all of a sudden
3
it's
incompletions.
3 incompletions and 51-yard field goal. It's like, shit, it's so you're driving and then all of a sudden it stalls, right? So you end up settling for a field goal, and awesome that we hit a 51-yard field goal. That's great. And that didn't feel like a huge, like some sort of huge problem, in the sense that, okay, we moved the ball that drive, we go get a field goal. Like, okay, we're doing the thing, right? Well, and then we get the 4th down stop, and you're like, okay, all right, we're doing this. Like this is great. And then, the next drive, again, not completely devoid of, plays. We had, there was a completion to Aesop for 19 yards, and And then there was another completion to Aesop for 11 yards. So they were moving the ball okay, kind of. And again, after starting in pretty decent field position because of the fourth down stop, on their own 38, 39, whatever it was. And then, you get rescued on 4th and 10 with a defensive holding. And so you're like, all right, well, here we go. You got a pass to Borghi that takes you down to the 1. And then, you got an offside penalty and you're like, it's 1st and goal. And then it's scramble for no gain, incomplete pass, 2-yard, no chance pass to Roderick Fisher. And that's the one I think that felt like the really huge missed opportunity. I mean, you had 1st and goal from the Utah 9, and you can't get past Utah's 7. And that is just like so...
With a chance to take the lead.
Yes, with a chance to take the lead, right? Even though at that point you feel like you've been... probably outplayed a bit, right?
Definitely.
Like, I mean, you don't feel like you've gotten, your face kicked in, but you feel like, okay, we've been outplayed a little bit, but we've got a chance to take a lead, and then you get a field goal, and then Utah comes back with a touchdown, right after that. 10 plays, 75 yards, 3 minutes, and then, of course, they got the ball back to start the second half, put 3 more points on the board, and, and suddenly, an 11-point lead feels like this massively, difficult hill to climb. And of course it proved to be.
Well, and then, and when I was talking about the chunk plays, I wasn't meaning like 10, 15-yard plays.
Sure,
I mean
not
more
like the really big
40-yard, like that they've been getting all season up until now, the 40, 50, 60-yard touchdown plays.
Didn't have one of those.
Nothing. And
I'm not even sure how many. I'll look while you're talking, but I'm not even sure how many 20-plus plays we had. We may not have had any.
I don't know if they had a single one. But,
I'm going to keep talking.
Yeah. So I think part of the reason, and it kind of seems like the team had that feeling. Gordon at least had that feeling too when they were down 24-13. I think he pressed a little bit.
Yeah.
I think what that UCLA game did is gave them maybe the offense this complex that they actually do have to score every time. Like when you score 63 in a game and you don't win, like you're gonna feel like we got to score every time. And I think that maybe has impacted Gordon a little bit in this game. And then he's playing easily the best defense that they've seen all year. And one of the, obviously Cal and UW are probably better coming up, and ASU maybe even too. So he's got to figure it out. But at the same time, it's like, he seemed to be pressing. You talked about in your column the interception that he threw late. That just seemed like pressing, and so it's. It just had that feeling 24, and then obviously when it got to 31, you're like, just try to make it look better, which they couldn't. They had another long drive down to they got to the 2 and stopped on 4th down. And so they once again, we're talking about they only had 4 genuine scoring opportunities the whole game. And when you're inside the 40 and when you're not getting the big 40, 50-yard touchdowns to make up for that, you're not getting any special teams touchdowns, any defensive touchdowns, that's going to be tough sledding. And obviously we were hoping, based on what Pittman of USC did to their corners, we were hoping that WSU's wide receivers could do the same, but they just couldn't. They weren't getting the separation regularly.
Yeah, they really didn't do anything.
Yeah, they were just I mean, it's you can blame Gordon for some of it, and we did get some all 22.
Yeah. I thought that was awesome.
I know, it's so funny. I was watching the bar and people were complaining, and I'm like, "This is awesome." You can see, but then they would
actually see everything.
They would switch between that and this ultra zoom. I'm just like, give me the all 22. I'd rather have the all 22 than the ultra zoom.
Yeah, like I don't need.
Especially in our offense, faces. Man. Yeah, we know who they are. So it was just, just a fucking rough night. So you find it? You found what you're looking for?
I did. So one play of 20-plus yards. And it was a 21-yard gain, Anthony Gordon to Renard Bell in the looks like late first quarter.
Was that not the touchdown?
It was on the touchdown drive. So
okay.
So yeah, late first quarter, and then after that, there were only 4 other passing plays of 15 or more.
Man, he averaged
a couple of 19s, couple of 15s.
He averaged,
and then we had 1 rushing play of 10 plus, and that was it.
Gordon was averaging 10.3 yards per attempt coming into the game. He averaged 5 yards an attempt.
Yeah,
which
crazy.
Is really bad for a passing.
Yeah,
that's really bad.
You know, I do think I think, you know, Leach talked about toughness after the game, and he made a comment about reading their own clippings. And, you know, it's sort of like, well, how does that square with them just, you know, really getting shit on after the UCLA game, right? Like the whole team getting, you've blown this game.
That's what we could buy into that when they're up big and then they just totally let down. But when you just experienced a loss like that and then you come in, like what clippings were you reading before that?
That's why I think he was actually talking about the offense.
Yeah.
Like I think that's probably who he was talking to, and my guess is I'd probably think he was probably focusing on the wide receivers and the offensive line more than anything, particularly the receivers. You know, I'll be honest, watching the All-22, I was like, oh shit, there's like nobody open. Like I don't. And
you're
that's
like, just throw it to Borghi. Just throw it to Borghi.
And you know, obviously, quarterbacks can kind of, and look, you know, I didn't play quarterback. I'm certainly no quarterback expert, but it seems to me that, you know, quarterbacks can get, when their guys aren't getting open, they can kind of go one of 2 directions. Either they get the Luke Falk happy feet, you know, check down variety, where they just sort of panic, right? And they get like, you know, paralysis, staring at it, going, oh my God, nobody's open. And I think an alternative is what we saw with Gordon, which is you just end up staring a guy down, you know, hoping a guy can beat a guy, thinking, you know, okay, this is my,
like he'll come open again. He'll come open eventually. He usually does.
This is my one matchup that I think can win on this play. This is where I think the one hole will probably be. Like, so instead of going through your progression, because when you go through the progression, it's covered. Right. Instead, you're like, okay, I'm going to try and get into, you know, the right play. And then, you know, maybe that guy's going to come open eventually. And then, of course, that has a whole host of other issues where, you know, you end up drawing other defenders. So, you know, I mean, it wasn't great all around. I think that the receivers are probably getting torn apart a little bit for maybe not fighting as hard as they needed to. You know, I mean, things came pretty easy the first 4 weeks, right? I mean, you know, when you're breaking off 20, 30, 40, 50-yard plays pretty regularly, you know, it's human nature. Like we can all go, oh, well, geez, they should have more discipline than that. But it's like, come on, like it's human nature. When something comes easy for a while, you expect it to keep coming easy. And then all of a sudden it's, you know, I think somebody, you know, said it this way in one of the comment threads, which is the one that always pops up, is that, you know, everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth. Right. And then all of a sudden the plan's out the window and, you know, and the receivers got, you know, they got punched in the mouth. I mean, Utah went, you know, I mean, Utah challenged them. And they did not rise to the challenge. And then, of course, the offensive line was not great. The left tackle in particular was, you know, struggled pretty hard. So I think that when Leach was talking about the clippings, I'm pretty sure he was talking about the offense and just, you know, both the ability to fight and then, you know, and maybe Gordon's ability to, you know, just accept what's there. And, you know, and that takes, you know, we joke about, you know, check down Charlie with Luke Falk or whatever, but, you know, obviously there's a little bit of in between and it takes a certain amount of mental toughness to say, okay, you know, I'm going to dump it off to the running back. We're going to get 5 yards and we're going to live to fight another day.
We had the in between last year.
Right. We had the in between last year. And there's a certain amount of toughness in sort of taking what you can get so that you can have another chance. It's not always framed that way, right? Like, well, how is that tough? You're just checking it down. But it's like, you've got to resist the urge to try and win it with one throw, which eventually Gordon fell into in the fourth quarter. So, you know, I think it'll be a learning experience. I think that the offense still has great potential to be awesome. I think there's a good chance that this Washington notwithstanding is the best defense we face all year, and it might even be better than Washington. I'm not convinced of.
You think better than Cal?
I will say this. I have not watched a lot of Cal this year. My knowledge of Cal's defense is pretty much limited to last year.
Yeah, fair enough. Even if you're looking at scores, if you're looking at box scores, Cal's defense doesn't seem to have been the dominant force.
Yeah. Washington only scored 20 or whatever.
19.
But that was
that's
in the middle of the night.
That's definitely
whatever.
Cal's best defensive performance this year was Washington. Yeah. But yeah, we just saw what Arizona State in a limited possession game did to them. But I mean, Evan Weaver is amazing, but
yes,
I don't really want to talk about Cal that much. So we'll talk about Cal in a month and a half. But yeah, or if we talk about the scores, we can get into that. But I just don't have we'll get into this more. Next week's podcast, we're going to get into kind of taking stock of the season. We didn't want to, because we want to talk about basketball today. Sorry, guys. But
I make no apologies
for
that.
Oh yeah, we don't care.
We don't care.
But yeah. So but this is more like, okay, we know, now we know who we are. It's. I
think so.
Now that the last game becomes a little more frustrating because you're like,
sure,
we might be clawing for 6 wins at this point.
Sure.
But I what you said in your column is they could be 6 or they could be 8 or they could be 5, and you wouldn't be that surprised by any of it.
Right.
But that's because in 2015 they were 2-2. And then they rattled off 7 of 8, or 6 of 7. So it's you never know what these Leach teams, they seem to correct themselves.
Yeah.
So I don't know. We'll get into that more next week. But yeah as far as this game goes, I'm just I just mostly feel dumb that we kind of from our perspective underestimated Utah a bit.
Well,
I'm like, okay.
I mean, do you feel that dumb because I mean, look, the fact that Utah, we both, I think, feel like Utah could have scored 50 if they'd wanted to. So, I mean, let's set that aside for a second. Let's just assume that 38 points from Utah is actually.
I mean, we both. I think you had Utah at 35 points, and I had them at 37.
Yeah.
So
I had 35, 31 or something like that, right? For win. So the 38 is not surprising. What was surprising was the 13. I mean, do you feel foolish for putting so much stock in the offense going into that? Because I don't.
I don't know if I feel foolish, but I feel like maybe we were overestimating the defenses that they've played so far, and so particularly their secondaries, and then also facing an actually good defensive line. I made a big difference. Even though Gordon only got sacked once, he had to run a bit.
Yeah.
He had to move around a bit.
Do you feel like he was under undue pressure?
No.
Because I don't.
No.
I felt like it wasn't
anything.
He had to move and whatever, but it's
last
not like
year,
he was constantly.
I mean, it's nothing out of the order. I'll say when I was watching it, it felt more, but then I kind of went back, looked at the box score. I'm like, he wasn't.
I mean, his issues weren't due to pressure.
Yeah, it was. So the big thing is that we've talked all year about how the receivers are so good that no one can cover them.
Yeah.
Washington aside.
Yes.
But now
they just got covered.
Yeah. And then we kind of were sold on because of what Michael Pittman did. But, one thing I said is that a big, strong, athletic receiver, and we don't have a receiver that's athletic as that guy. As that guy.
No, that guy's a future first or second round NFL pick.
So, but we maybe have some receivers who are better college receivers than he is right now.
Yeah, it's true.
But no one that can literally just. I mean, Patman's the closest one. and he did not have a great game. He was 9 targets, 5 catches. I think he was roughly at 6 yards of target.
Yeah.
He was also the guy that was probably open more than the other ones.
Yep.
So his athleticism helped him. But just the way Utah plays defense, they are trusting that you have to beat their guy.
Yeah.
And our guys were not being their guy. And one thing I did want to talk about is Brandon Arconato. And like, is he that important?
So in a vacuum, no, I don't think. If we say, okay, is Brandon Arconato the receiver super important? And it's like in a vacuum, no, I don't think so. But I think where he is important is in sort of the for lack of a better term, like the butterfly effect that comes from him being out. And, I'm hoping to maybe get, Brian Anderson or Jesse Casino to write about this at some point, or maybe I'll just write about it. I don't know. But just kind of talking about why that is. So basically we were down to zero Y receivers, right?
Because obviously they're not playing Cassidy Woods that much.
Right. So Cassidy Woods played a handful of snaps in this game, and that was it. So for whatever reason, they've decided they can't trust him or they don't want to use him or whatever, which is sort of bizarre to me, but that's what they've decided. And so up until Arconato got hurt, he was playing almost all of the snaps when Y was on the field, which was the majority of the time, right? So the majority of the time we are in what we call 10 personnel, right? 1 running back, 4 wide receivers, okay? So now what you've got, okay, so you take Arconato out of there. Okay, so who's going to play Y? Well, what they've done is they've moved Renard Bell over to Y. Well, now, okay, so...
And he got 9 targets, which I guarantee is the most he's ever gotten.
Yeah. And so now he's out of position, right? And
look, why does that matter? Like, I know you could... So...
Yeah, so like I'm not the expert on all of the nuances, but I know that it's a different position. Like you're running different routes.
Your cuts are different.
Yeah, and it's you're moving from right to left, and you are, and just when you call a certain play, he's now running a different route on that play than what he was running before, and just finding the soft spots and just all of the little nuances that go into playing one of those receiver positions really well. He's now doing it from a different position. I mean, it's, we talk about right tackle, left tackle. I mean, I think that's probably a pretty good comparison. It's just not quite the same, and there's timing issues and things like that. Okay, so you're doing that. So now you've taken this guy who is typically rotating in with Travell Harris at H, and
right.
Now he's not rotating.
Playing roughly half the game.
Exactly. So now he's not rotating in. So Travell Harris is playing most of the game, right? And then Bell is playing over here in this unfamiliar position.
Playing most of the game.
And then the way that so instead of having other guys rotate in to give them breaks, what you noticed was that they were using 20 personnel to try and get guys breaks. So 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers. And so they're running this 20 personnel a ton. And it's like, that sort of, I don't know what kind of a crimp that puts in the game plan or whatever, but it definitely, when basically instead of bringing in backup wide receivers, you're bringing in Deion McIntosh to get somebody a break. And so, again, I just have to imagine that ends up limiting some of what you can do and some of what you want to do and the ways that you might try to attack the other team. I just got it. So basically what you had through the first, however many games is you had whenever they wanted to bring Arconato off for a break, that's when they'd go to 20. Well, now what you've got is they're basically rotating these guys in. They're rotating Harris.
So if either Harris or Bell gets a break, right. They go to
Harris
20.
or Bell or McIntosh is on the sideline, right? So it's like one of those 3 guys is on the sideline. They're not all 3 on the field at the same time. And that's how they're getting their breaks. You'd bring in the 20 personnel. Harris would go off for a couple plays, and then he'd, and so, yeah, I think it really does sort of foul everything up. It really does have like this ripple effect on the offense. And look, it's not a thing where you go, that's why they scored 13 points, right? I mean, it's
right, but it has an
when
impact. You're playing especially you're playing the best defense you've played all year, and you got not a hand behind your back, but you got a couple fingers down or whatever.
Well,
and plus, like McIntosh is he's been in this offense for a month.
Right.
He clearly is uncomfortable. Like, and he is, and you can see the ability there we've seen, but he's just not like making plays. And so, I mean, he did make a play against New Mexico State or Northern Colorado.
Yeah, I think it was the next week.
Against Northern Colorado, but in
garbage time.
In garbage time, but other than that, like he
did have the touchdown. He did score the touchdown
against Northern Colorado. Yeah.
No, against Utah. That was him. So he did a little angle route out of the backfield.
Oh yeah, of course,
to catch the touchdown.
But he's just not like it's all these other touches were kind of painful to watch.
Well,
like
again, I just think that, like, you know,
and like I said, you want receivers in the pattern. You don't want running backs in the pattern. Like especially running like a guy that's only been in the offense for a month on an offense that is predicated on reps. So yeah, it's just it's the butter. Like it's just. You go from a guy who's been in the offense for 5 years to be someone who's been in the offense for a month on the field. Basically, you're trading reps for those two, and then you have a guy who's playing a different position. He's been playing it for all of a week and a half.
They just do different things to the defense.
Yeah, and because like Renard Bell at 4.9 yards a target Renard Bell is usually like one of the most explosive guys. Yeah. So he's and the position that he is playing is not typically the explosive one when Renard River Craycraft accepted, but like that was just him. But
Arconado's been explosive like that.
I mean, he's been
maybe not as explosive.
I wouldn't say, he's not like. I mean, he's doing 15 to 20 yard catches, but he's not.
That's
he's not. You know, he's not like Bell is like. You know, break away from the D guy.
Of course.
But now he's in this other position, and Anthony Gordon is probably not as comfortable with him as he is with Arconato, honestly.
No, certainly not.
And so it's
and you're
crazy.
missing Jameer Calvin. Like that's the other piece that we haven't talked about.
Yep.
You know, I mean,
so basically we're two. So your top two Ys are down.
I mean, let's be real. Jameer Calvin is the only 4-star player
on the entire offense.
So, you know, I mean, that's the talent.
The other one's the third string quarterback.
Right. So, you know, that's the kind of talent you're taking out when he's injured. You went from thinking you've got all these guys who, you know, all this talent and have receiver, and it's still true at outside, which is sort of bananas because you're just like, you know, you're at a point in the outside where you're talking about redshirting, you know, Calvin Jackson to save him for another year, but you know, and obviously he must not, you know, maybe they just feel that great about him on the outside, or they just feel like he can't play inside because seems like he
looks like he
could play wide. When he moves, you're like, that guy could play inside.
Yeah,
but,
exactly.
You know, I mean, again, as we've talked about, it's probably easier to go from H to Y than it is to go from X or Z to Y.
Certainly,
so. Certainly. You know, so you know they probably figured
it's also more of a blocking element to the H and Y.
And you just end up wasting a guy to throw him in there. So I don't know. I'm hopeful that the bye week. I mean, we can maybe talk about what we're hopeful about with the bye week.
Hopefully, people get healthy.
But. Yeah, that's the big thing, and you know, and maybe people get a little more comfortable. You know that if Bell has to stick there, then. You know, maybe he just gets a little more comfortable and the timing gets a little better and, you know, everybody just feels, you know, a little more confident about what they're doing.
Yeah. It's, it is what it is. What about the defense, man? Like, we're riding with that now.
They're terrible.
They're
super terrible.
They're as bad as we imagined after.
And I don't think like this is the thing. Like I'm tempted to think Utah's offense is actually pretty good. Like I'm not
before the game they were I believe like 22nd in SP plus.
Yeah,
so it's
they
weren't.
Yeah, that's pretty good. So I think they're pretty good.
Huntley's pretty good.
Huntley's pretty good. You know, I'm not sure their receivers are all that great.
Yeah, that's the frustrating part.
But you know, good enough. But here's the thing: like what happened to our defense in that game again was not getting just beat by better players or better whatever. Like it was just bad defense. And that is so hard to watch when, it's one thing when you just get beat. It's another thing when it's like, you're thrown to guys that don't have defenders within 10 yards of them in any direction. Like that's the kind of stuff where you just go like, what are we doing? We're not playing with Paul Wolf players out there. Like that was right. Like we understood when it was Paul Wolf players and, what's his name? The receiver for Oregon was like turning, Toomer around all the way into the end zone. It was like, we sort of, I mean, it sucked, but we understood it. This makes no sense whatsoever. Like really we might be under talented. I know there are people out there that believe that, but we are not under talented to the point that this should be happening.
Shouldn't be I don't even know what the SP Plus ranking is at this point, but like I mean, I would assume they're in the 80s, 90s worst defense in the country.
Yeah.
So it's I wouldn't expect that, like it's
well, Utah had 15 what they define as chunk plays here in the thing.
And Tracy Claeys has really just never had a defense this bad. So like it's it's crazy. Like so they're 84th, by the way. Offense still checking in at 6th even after that game. So
even after that.
Yeah.
That's pretty wild.
So yeah, but Utah's offense up to 18th now.
Did you see anything in the game that like influences your thinking about the defense going forward, or was it just more
it was
of the same?
It took out of my mind that the last quarter and a half against UCLA was some sort of like fluky,
like crazy aberration.
Like they thought they had won and they were coasting. We know that they're bad now,
right?
And they're not going to play the next game. They're not going to play a tough offense, and so maybe they'll look a little better because of that. But at this point, I don't even know if they're good enough to. I mean,
do you feel good about going down to Arizona State and holding Arizona State under 30?
No, dude.
No. Like, I don't even care. Like, and I know, Arizona State, I don't, I'm like this, like, we're going to have to score in the 30s if we want to have a chance to win. Like,
yeah, this is the worst defense since 2014.
Well, what doesn't make a lot of sense to me, and I don't know if you have thoughts on this, but it seems like there are more, quote unquote talented guys who aren't playing. And, guys who are maybe a little bigger, a little more athletic, whatever, however you want to define talented, right? And those guys aren't playing. Okay, so, again, so let's talk about the one that everybody tends to focus on, which is Lamont McDougal, right? So that's the big one because he's, we've wanted, a 300-pound McNugget in the middle for however many years, right? This is our first like legit, nose tackle type guy, space eater. Like we haven't had a guy like this in a few years, right? So maybe since like Robert Barber,
right?
Okay, so all right, so he's not playing. Right. And there's like, okay, so why isn't he playing? Well, is he just like, is he in the doghouse? Is he right? I mean, like what's going on? And then it'd be one thing if that was the only spot, but then you just kind of look and you go, okay, well, why isn't Pat Nunn playing? Why isn't, Tyrese Ross playing? Why is Armani Marsh playing, who's, a former walk-on, right? Like at corner, it's, you just kind of go like, well, why are these guys playing? And about the only thing you can conclude is that, somewhere along the line, Tracy Claeys decided that it was more important to put the guys on the field who, I don't know, like he thought got it or understood what he wanted or whatever, which obviously is important. But when you've got that many spots where maybe Willie Taylor's another one, right? Like, so he like our guy who led us in, like he led us in sacks last year, right? Or was close to it.
Yeah. havoc. Like havoc.
Just a havoc dude. He's barely playing, right? So I go, how, right? I'm like, how is that we've got these guys and they're just not playing?
Do we think Dom Civils is hurt? Is that
so? He's not even practicing right now. He's got like some sort of personal issue.
Right. That's right. I remember
but,
that now, yeah.
And obviously you can sort of see with the Justice Rogers situation, you can see why they wanted to move Civils back there, kind of like, we've got a problem here at Mike linebacker and we need other solutions. So you can see why they moved him there, but still it's like, and look, and I'm not like Ron Stone is the guy who's playing that position now. And he looks like he's got, awesome potential. So I'm not, this is not to like bag on him or anything. In fact, that's probably the one spot where it's like, yeah, this guy looks like he could develop into something really, really good.
Well, you look at nickel. Too.
Right. So like you've got Skylar Thomas down there and he's just getting torched all over the place. He's objectively bad in that position. And so it's like,
he's a safety.
He's a safety, right? So, you just go, what are we doing, right? What are we doing with personnel? What's driving our personnel decisions? And if you're like, well, it's because these guys get it, or these guys will do what I want them to do, or whatever. It's like, well, but isn't part of your job as a coach to like get more out of your guys? Like, isn't that sort of your job to say, okay, look, who are my most talented guys? How can I get what I need out of them so that my unit can be as good as it can possibly be? And I don't know what the issue is on defense in particular, but the word that just comes to mind is dysfunctional. Like, it just looks dysfunctional wherever that's coming from, whether it's coming from Clays or some other source on the defense. It just looks dysfunctional. And it reminds me of Bresky defense, where it was like dudes just didn't have a clue where they were going. They couldn't keep up. It was a total train wreck, and something's got to get fixed. Because I'm losing faith in Tracy Claeys in a hurry.
Yeah. And then there's the whole lack of, player leadership or whatever, lack of a defensive leader. And it's like, well, at some point that's got to be on the coaching staff too. Like you should be identifying those guys that are going to be your leaders, especially leaders in certain positions, your Mike and your whatever, or if you're not going, or your free safety, guys like that. Like, but it just doesn't seem like there's anyone, and it's, I know they lost like every single one of those leaders from last year, and Hunter Dale and Peyton Pelluer and Jalen Thompson, and so yeah, I get that, but at the same time, it's not like this is a bunch of freshmen and sophomores playing, like, or a bunch of first and second year guys, because even the sophomores are typically third year sophomores. Like there's you got to have someone up there. Like last year, I mean, they just it took one guy on the offense, and I know quarterback's a different thing, but yeah, it's just it's like what's going on here? Like it's getting frustrating, and it doesn't look like it's just we're gonna have to deal with this the rest of the year, and that's why it makes the prospect of any game like iffy going forward.
I mean, I have zero hope that it's going to get better. Unless about the only thing I could imagine changing their fortunes to any substantial degree would be substantial personnel changes. And I don't even know if that creates an immediate improvement,
right.
Like for example, let's talk about middle linebacker, right? So let's say this bye week gives them a chance to plug Travion Brown into Mike, right? He did play a handful of snaps, mostly on obvious passing downs is where they had him, which actually makes a lot of sense, right? Because he's a little rangier, a little faster, so you put him in there when you need him to drop and cover a guy. But or even potentially try and chase down Tyler Huntley, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it makes some sense. So maybe the bye week's used to, slot him in there for more snaps. And if that's the case, great. I don't know that creates immediate returns, but maybe, by the time we go through this 3-game stretch, have another bye, now for the last month, any personnel changes you've made really start to kick in that last month. So I'm curious because that's about the only thing that could lead me to think that, maybe there's a potentially big change on the horizon with it. And I don't even know how capable they are of big change, but I don't know. It just sort of like, that's about the only thing that could make me think maybe there's some hope. Beyond that, you know, if you're just trotting the same dudes out there who clearly aren't getting it, I don't think it's going to click. I mean, fans love this idea of things clicking, right? Like, oh, it clicked. And it's like, oh, remember when UCLA clicked?
Yeah.
And then they came out and scored 17 points against Arizona, right? Like, UCLA did not click. We were just immensely shitty on defense.
Right.
And that's it. And it's like, people try to overcomplicate things. You know, it's like, things typically don't click like that, where what you are doing suddenly gets, you know, you go from the 85th defense in the country to like the 20th. Like, that's, you don't just simply start playing like the 20th best defense unless you're getting back a whole bunch of injured dudes or something. Like,
right.
It just doesn't happen.
Yeah. So,
Rant over.
So
How's
yeah,
that for hope? How's that for optimism? God, oh, just like okay. I'm so. I mean, maybe we should talk about this next week. But I'm just so I'm so irritated that we have this offense, and there's just a trash defense with it. Like, I know the offense didn't play great in this game. That's fine. Like I think they're going to play better going forward. I think Gordon's going to learn a ton from that. I still have huge hopes for the offense, but like, they are paired with this trash ass defense. And it's like, God, why? Anyway, maybe we talk about that next week.
Yeah.
I think we
think,
don't. I don't know.
Yeah,
But
maybe we will.
it's so irritating.
I definitely have some ideas for that. Yeah, so we'll put that game to bed. Yeah, that sucked. We are who we thought we were, whatever you say. Pretty much. But yeah, let's. I think we need to take a break, man.
Yeah, we haven't taken a break yet.
They're gonna get mad at us.
That's probably against the SB Nation rules.
I know, right? All right. We'll be back. We're going to talk about some hoops and some beer.
And we're back.
So, what are you drinking, man?
Dude, I am drinking. I'm like halfway through it now, so I'm a little. If I get,
I'm already done with I'm already done with the beer that I had picked up. I was
gonna say that's probably why I'm yelling more, because I'm like.
Yeah.
I'm getting deeper into this thing. So I had I'm having the Silver City, the Giant Made of Shadows, which is their Belgian strong ale.
All right.
Behold the Giant. This strong, dark, malty Belgian style ale is rich in dark fruit, caramel, and coffee character. Run from the shadows, not from the Giant. Alcohol by volume 9.9%.
Ooh.
So, definitely malty. Probably more malty than what I typically go for, but it's tasty. I dig it. If you like that,
does it have that Belgian sort of Belgian candy sugar sweetness to it?
Yeah, it's there's definitely that. I don't. I know it says there's some coffee flavor to it. I'm definitely not catching much, if any, coffee. But definitely the caramel.
Those liars.
Yeah, yeah, how dare you? But no, like the dark fruit, it almost tastes a little bit like a candied cherry, kind of like a chocolate covered cherry kind of flavor. But yeah, it's good. It's doing the job.
So
what are you drinking?
So I'm using the bye week this week to head on over to Yakima and go to the Fresh Hop Ale Festival, which I generally don't get to go to because usually there's a game in Pullman the same weekend, and I choose to go to that instead. So yeah, I'm going to that. I'm also going to the Fresh Hop. There's a hop company over there that does a Fresh Hop party on Friday, so I'm just going to the Fresh Hop party on Friday night, and then the Fresh Hop Ale Festival on Saturday. I procured a VIP ticket off Craigslist for like under what it normally costs. So I'm pretty stoked about that. So that gets me in an hour early, and I get to imbibe all the, because one of the worst parts I hate about it is the lines at every festival. But that is truly one of the best festivals, beer festivals I've ever been to. Highly recommend it in Yakima. But yeah, so in honor of that, so I started today off with a fresh hop Crikey from Reuben's.
Oh, I've had that.
Yeah, it's
good.
Pretty tasty. Crikey is a very classic IPA profile. I believe they call it Crikey because they use some English hops in it. But this is made with fresh hops. They change it. They just add that to the recipe. Obviously, it was pretty tasty. Nice classic IPA flavors. Your pine notes, things like that. Stuff that IPAs used to taste like before they made these designer hops that made everything taste like juice. Which I am not complaining about. And then Reuben's, good job on that. I'm also having another fresh hop beer. This is kind of like the quintessential fresh hop beer. And it's Cowichy Canyon, from Fremont. Probably the one fresh hop beer that I look forward to every year. So what this beer is, made with is, I guess I'll just do the Jeff thing and just straight up read instead of going off my own knowledge, I'll go. So, Cowichy Canyon Fresh Hop Ale is brewed with select hops grown in the Cowichy Canyon of the Yakima Valley, which are harvested and placed in our kettle within 24 hours, preparing a unique once-a-year beer. That's basically them explaining what fresh hop beer is.
In case you're wondering.
Yeah, we make Cowichy Canyon Ale in partnership with hop growing wizards from the Yakima Valley in an effort to expand the hop industry in Washington State. Because hops matter. That's a play on there, because beer matters.
Right.
So a portion of all sales fund the Cowichy Canyon Conservancy. Cowichy Canyon runs between Yakima and Ellensburg. It's a beautiful area. Sometimes it's nice to just take that drive. It's a little longer, but it's a beautiful drive. Highly recommend it. If you get out of your car, watch out for rattlesnakes. But otherwise, it's a pretty beautiful area. And so basically, this is an organic hop farm, and basically give all of their hops to Fremont to do these fresh hop beers. And they usually do a couple variants of them. But I have only seen, they have their Field to Ferment series as well. Fremont loves the fresh hop beers. But Cowichy Canyon is probably their best one every year, I think. They used to do one was like Citra and Simcoe, and one was a different time. But I don't know, maybe they've just decided to make one beer now. I haven't seen the other one.
They do have their Farm to Ferment.
Yeah, I know. That's why I said the Field to Ferment one.
Yeah, or the Field to Ferment. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but no, they used to do the Cowichy Canyon one specifically. They did different hop variants of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's just a real classic fresh hop beer. I really think it's the quintessential fresh hop beer because it's got this really golden body, and it's all about highlighting the hops. But they actually do it well. A lot of breweries who try to make this style, which is fresh hop ale style, which is typically like an IPA type thing, but they'll typically get more vegetal, but Fremont balances them out very well so that you don't feel like you're like biting into a hop, but you still kind of taste the freshness of the hops as well.
So for people who don't know what what's distinct about a fresh hop versus a regular, dry hopped beer or whatever, like the 60-second explanation of what the difference is and why it only comes around once a year.
So you said dry hop. That's a different thing.
Sorry, that's a different thing.
A dry hopped is is when you hop the beer post boil while it's fermenting, essentially. That's very to give it aromatics and stuff. Basically just absorbs the oils from the hops and you get the aromatics. But anyway, fresh hop beer is, the reason that you see so many of them where we live is because, roughly 70% of the hops in the U.S. are grown in the Yakima Valley. And then another pretty big chunk is grown in the Willamette Valley in Oregon. So we have a ton of fresh hops, or a ton of hop farms, and so we can make these fresh hop beers because a fresh hop is when it's picked and then thrown in the beer within 24 hours of when you've picked it. So otherwise you'd go dry it out, pelletize it, whatever. Now they have cryo dust, whatever. This you just with some fresh hops, they do let the hops dry and then throw them in. If they don't dry them out, like they call them kiln dry them. Then that's called a wet hop beer, which is I featured a wet hop beer on Baxter's Beer a couple weeks ago, the Silver City one. But basically fresh hop, it's exactly what it means. It's picked and thrown in the beer the same day, and that's why it's much easier for us to do it up here in the Pacific Northwest, because the hops are a couple hours drive away. In Yakima, they're literally just brought on over from the farm, and so that's why the Fresh Hop Ale Fest is in Yakima. That's why that's the place to be for that, because that is because a lot of the brewers are going to Yakima, not just to pick up but this is the time of the year for hop selection as well. So brewers go there and they pick their hops, and then those are dried and pelletized and whatever, and then they basically they do these contracts for a few years of the hops. So if you're around Yakima, if you go to like a sports center downtown on on a late night you might see a whole bunch of brewers from all around the country getting drunk. So it's a common thing. I actually know a guy who has a brewery called Wandering Hop, which I featured on here before.
Yep.
It's real close to one of the the big hop facilities down there, and he during hop season, he was, when he first started, he wasn't brewing any pilsners or anything. Those take a lot longer to make than like an IPA or something, but he would have Freem Pilsner on tap, just so the because brewers kind of famously like drinking lighter beers because they are typically drinking all day at work. So they like to drink lighter beers, pilsners, things like that. They respect pilsners more than your average consumer because they know how much harder they are to make. And so like they love to do that. But anyway, so yeah, Yakima is just teeming with brewers this time of year. If you're some sort of fanboy, your favorite brewer might be just hanging around. Yeah. But yeah, so
what are some good ones that people might be able to like find pretty easily? Like is Field to Ferment, that one should be pretty easy to find.
Definitely a good one. Anything from Fremont, the Field to Ferment, Comanche Canyon.
Yeah, the Fresh Hop Crikey should be pretty easy to find if you go to
it's
a beer store.
It's a few weeks old now, so it's probably gone most places at this point. Yeah. Let's see.
Because like if someone's not,
they're typically not
fresh hops.
Yeah, they're not.
I feel like you should try it.
So there's I've seen one from Seven Seas that they canned. I haven't had it yet. I'm going to go there this week, so I'll probably have it when I go there. There aren't a lot of packaged ones that are from bigger breweries that are packed, because it's hard to make it in a large scale, because you have to be like a big enough brewery that can get that contract to make it but yeah, so I wish I mean, honestly, it's the Fremont ones are the ones that everyone can find.
Pretty easy
like those are and if you're on draft in the Seattle area, Cloudburst makes a ton of them. They won the collaboration between them and Holy Mountain won the Fresh Hop Ale Fest last year.
That's not surprising.
Holy Mountain does a ton of them. You have to go there. Reuben's did the Fresh Hop Double Crush, which you could probably find at beer stores and stuff. It goes pretty quick though, but that's definitely, especially like hazies. And then the Silver City Wet Hop Tropic Haze, pretty easy to find as well. Silver City has pretty broad reach. So you can definitely find a few. Truthfully, and I've told you this before, Jeff, it's usually like IPA pale ale styles that you'll see in Fresh Hop, naturally, because it's hoppy styles. But my favorite ones are always kind of these not typically hoppy styles that you put fresh hops in, so like pilsners or kolsches. Like my favorite one last year was like a kolsch from Skookum. They did a fresh hop kolsch and it was so tasty. And then this year I'm excited to try it. There's a new brewery in Olympia. Now I can't remember the name. It's like shit. It's like Humby Mumby or something. It's like some. Damn it! Now I can't remember. But they have their. They did a fresh hop. Here, hold on. I can pull up Red Hot's tap list, and it'll tell me. So they did a fresh hop German style Pilsner, and one of my friends told me, and I haven't had it yet, but I did see that they put it on tap. So it's Headless Mumby. From a new brewery in Olympia, actually, funny enough, about 4 blocks from where I used to live. So I probably would have. They're a lager only brewery, so that's why. But so I'm excited to go try that one. Fresh hop Pilsner. So I highly recommend it. So Varietal out of Sunnyside does a lot of so they do a collaboration every year with Holy Mountain. That's a Keller beer, which is kind of light of her style. So I highly recommend if you see a fresh hop beer that is not an IPA or a pale ale, try it, because the brewery's probably super proud of it and it's probably really good. So yeah,
I gotta do that.
So yeah, Headless Mumby. I'm gonna have to make it on down to Red Hot this week so I can get a glass of that before it goes. But yeah, so fresh hop season. I'm super stoked to imbibe in hops this weekend, and I love that festival. I'm really stoked I have a VIP ticket, so I get in an hour early, don't have to wait in line, I get food, it's great. Yeah.
It's just cool. Like, I love fresh hop season because it's just something different.
It's very unique. Obviously, it's pretty unique. It's unique to the Northwest.
And it only happens once a year.
Yeah.
And that's it. Like, you can only get these beers in late September, early October, and that's it. And then they're gone. And, there's an element of that's kind of cool. It's just a different flavor profile. Like you said, it's kind of got this, kind of earthy, like you said, I think you used the word vegetal.
Yeah.
Flavor to it. But it's like this intense hoppy experience. And, I dig it because it's, you drink so much beer all year long and you get these different takes on, different styles, but there's only one time a year where the ingredients actually will do this one particular thing.
Exactly.
So it's cool.
Yeah, it's very cool. So Sierra Nevada is one of the rare breweries outside of the Pacific Northwest that does them. They actually have them flown in that day so they can brew the beer. They buy enough hops to where they can get that made, and they actually do a Northern Hemisphere fresh hop beer, and then they do a Southern Hemisphere fresh hop beer as well. So they fly them in from New Zealand and Australia to do fresh hop beer, which that one comes out at a different time of year. It comes out in what is our spring and their fall, so it's pretty cool. Another one that Lagunitas, their California brewery that does fresh hop ones, it's called Born Yesterday. Highly recommend that one too. That's actually one that you can probably find. I don't know if they do it anymore, but it was pretty easy to find when they did do it. So yeah, go out and try a fresh hop beer if you haven't. It's hard to miss if you live in the Northwest right now. Just go to your favorite watering hole. They'll probably have one on tap.
Yeah, they probably will. All right, basketball. What do we got? We signed a guy.
Yeah.
Surprising.
Very surprising.
Yeah, because we all thought they were full.
We thought they didn't have any space.
We thought they didn't have any scholarships.
Thought it was just all taken up.
Yeah.
Yeah, but so you wrote up a profile. So why don't you get into? I know that you saw it as filling a need. Get into why to fill a need.
Yeah. So, one thing we know about Kyle Smith is he does like to have 2 ball handlers on the floor at all times, and that's kind of a big deal for him. And I think he also prefers to have. Mostly, I think he prefers to have combo guards, right? He wants guys who can do multiple things. Not that, most coaches don't, right? Like I think if you ask a basketball coach, would you like a guy who can only pass or only shoot or can do both? And it's like, right. So, you obviously want the guys who can do both, but
it's
this
not
is a guy.
1947.
Yeah, right. So Jalen Shedd is a guy, so grad transfer, coming to us from Texas State, the Bobcats, right?
Well, I'm impressed immediately.
Yeah, well, one thing to know is that Texas State finished well ahead of us in the KenPom the KenPom efficiency rankings. So they won 24 games last year. So this is a guy who has some experience winning. I don't know how much of a difference that actually makes, but he does come from a successful place. He started all of their games, and was a guy who was a pass first facilitator. And he only averaged 8 points, but he averaged 5 assists and averaged also 4 rebounds. I'll get to that in a sec, because I think that's actually a really, really big deal. But 8 points and 5 assists, didn't take a whole lot of shots.
What are these stats you're using?
I know.
I'm annoyed right now.
Well, just hold on, pal. I'm getting there. Okay. I'm getting there. So when we talk about the assists, he assisted on about 30% of his teammates' makes last year, which is actually quite a bit.
Yeah, that's 70th nationally among all players.
Yeah, and I think it was second or third in his conference. So, so that's a really good rate to be the guy who's assisting on your teammates' buckets. For context, WSU's leader was Ahmed Ali, and he was at 25.5%. So when he was on the floor, 1 out of every 4 makes that WSU had was assisted by Ali. So this is a guy who is assisting on roughly a third of his teammates' buckets. So that's a pretty high rate. He only took 14% of his team's shots when he was on the floor, which is a very low number. It's a very, very low number. That was easily lowest among their starters, and was really, as I wrote in the article, is pretty comparable to like basically what Viante Daniels did when he was on the floor. So if you think about how rarely he shot, just basically spot up threes, that's about how often this guy was shooting. But he is sort of he will get to the free throw line, which was a skill that Viante Daniels never really developed.
Relative to the amount he shoots.
Relative to the amount he shot,
so it's
right?
Not like it's not like James Harden out there. Yeah.
Exactly. So since he's not shooting a lot of shots, what you see is when you see kind of a stat profile like this, where a guy is assisting on a lot of shots, not taking a lot of shots himself, but also posting a pretty high free throw rate, which is the ratio of free throw attempts to shot attempts. So basically what that tells you is this is a guy who's kind of a drive and kick kind of guy. He's not afraid to get into the lane, but he's also kind of looking to find other people when he gets in there and then attack the rim if the opportunity presents itself. So he profiles as that kind of guy, and frankly, we don't really have that kind of guy on the roster. Yeah. We don't have a pass first kind of guy. I think that you could say Jervay Robinson is that kind of guy, but I think there's really no doubt in my mind that this new guy, Jalen Shedd, is a more talented player than Jervay Robinson, because Robinson kind of fits that mold stylistically, but is just not quite there talent-wise. So there's that piece. And then the other piece is those rebounds that I mentioned. His rebound rate was, I want to say, about 16%.
16, yeah.
Yeah, which is a really big number for a guard. Typically, you expect those guys to be like 10 to 12%. So 16% of 16% of the other team's misses, he's rebounding when he's on the floor. And again, that's a pretty large number. Your superior rebounders, like your like really, really good ones, are like 25% and above. So to get 16% out of a guard is a really good number. And in fact, I think I said that the only 2 regular rotation players for WSU last year who were higher than that was Robert Franks and CJ Ellaby. So that kind of gives you a sense.
Not 6'10" Jeff Pollard.
Right. Like that gives you a sense of just how good he is at crashing the board from the point guard position. And that's a really huge, when we look at the stat, like basically the year-to-year profiles from Kyle Smith, one of the things that's always consistent is that his team's defensive rebound. And so for this guy as a 6'1" point guard, to crash down and constantly be crashing down on the glass is I'm sure something that was really attractive to Kyle Smith. So yeah, really cool addition. I think he probably ends up being the starter at point guard right away, to be honest. I think that before you were maybe looking at a combo of, maybe Isaac Bonton and maybe Marvin Cannon kind of playing the 2 guards, and then CJ Ellaby playing the 3, and then basically Ellaby and Bonton could be or maybe it's Bonton, I don't know how you pronounce it, but those 2 guys could kind of be your ball handlers. I think there's a pretty decent chance this guy steps immediately into that role. And then the 2 guard, I'd guess Bonton, but maybe not, maybe Cannon, Ellaby at the 3, and then probably, Pollard at the 5. And I'm drawing a blank on the other grad transfer that's probably going to start at the 4. But that's kind of what I'm thinking. But you could also go Ellaby at the 2, and then, maybe go a little bigger at the 3. So, he kind of has a lot of options with this team, because you don't really look at the roster and think, oh yeah, these are clearly like your 5 or 6 best players. Like, he's got a lot of parts that do kind of some different things, which I think is a real advantage for a guy who's a pretty good coach. So, it's a nice little roster, and this is a guy who's a grad transfer. So, he's
the grad transfer is
replace him.
Deion James, by the way.
Deion James. There we go. Yeah. So anyways, he's brought in a couple of grad transfers. Those guys will play. They'll be gone in a year. You replace them with younger guys.
If they suck, they're gone.
Yeah.
That's like,
that's a good way to think of it.
Yeah. Like that's how he's built the roster is he had a ton of spots to fill. And we've already talked about this, but honestly, most of the people that are listening probably didn't hear that.
Probably.
Because that was like
they probably haven't been
April.
with us since April.
Yeah. So, but he basically took all those spots, a ton of spots, like a lot. And he didn't just go sign a bunch of freshmen. He did sign a bunch of freshmen, but not an abnormal number of freshmen. Right. Like he didn't like. It's funny. I just think of the volleyball team. What they're doing right now is like, when Greeny came in, she had to replace a bunch of people, and now they have this cycle where they have like 10 freshmen on the team at a time.
And that's hard.
And so you can see that.
Well, Tony Bennett got into that cycle too.
Tony Bennett got into that as well.
It's hard
because when Dick Bennett came on, they basically just cleaned house, and
they took one junior college player.
Yep.
And Jeff Varum, and then everybody else was freshmen.
Yep. And it worked out really well, but then then Tony kind of bailed when he kind of bailed after. He's like, yeah. But yeah. So, but he basically he signed a couple grad transfers, another couple, another transfer in there, another. Bonton and in there, and so
there was only I think 2 junior college guys.
Yeah.
So it was Henson and Bonton.
Yep. And so
we didn't over rely on JUCO guys, and those are 2 guys who I think were pretty well respected JUCO guys. Like it was like, oh yeah, like these are kind of legit JUCO guys, not the fringy JUCO guys that Ernie Kent.
Yeah. So basically, you inject some age into your roster. It's really, and the grad transfers are really nice because they've played in Division I basketball,
right?
Like, so it's right. they're experienced. They haven't played Pac-12, but honestly, is Pac-12 basketball that much better than Mountain West basketball at this point? No, not really.
Not really.
Obviously, Shed doesn't come in the
play
West,
some of that level of competition, right? I mean, you
exactly.
go play these teams in non-conference. It's not like they've never seen a Pac-12 team before,
So yeah, I mean, I really, you just gotta like how he built the roster, and then he brings in a freshman like Noah Williams. He's got
Markovetsky.
Yeah. I mean, that was we were pretty stoked on him.
Yeah.
Back in
Still
the
pretty
back. Like I've kind of forgotten. Like all the things but yeah, like he's got a 7-footer coming in, man. He's got, like there's guy, and then so he brought in guys that you can see he can work with in the future, but he brought in a lot of guys that can actually make the team better. So like you were talking about, with Shed, Jalen Shed, is that he is an upgrade over Jervay Robinson.
Yep.
So Robinson now, instead of having to be your starting point guard, is maybe,
or giving you 15 minutes off the bench. Now he's probably bumped out of the rotation.
Yeah, and then if he has to come in the rotation, it's 15 minutes at the most, and so it's like 10 minutes. So it's and it's so it feels like, we'll have to see once they start playing, but it feels like he's upgraded the roster.
Yeah.
Which even when he was hired, that's not even what we were just the fact that he has, principles that he coaches to and think
the ability to coach.
The ability to coach. I don't know why if you should, okay, if you're new to this, if I was going to recommend any episode, just go find the Ernie Got Fired episode and listen to that one.
Good one.
That was, if you want to hear us at our
That's
best.
going to be like an all-time greatest.
Yeah, like I'll always recommend that one. But and it's timeless. It's fine. Also, when Kyle Smith got hired episode, you should probably listen to that one as well.
Yeah,
we'll probably recommend that one again when the season starts up. But practice is about to start, so we're actually going to see.
Practice started on Friday.
Oh, did it already? Did they not do a Midnight Madness type thing?
They didn't. They didn't do one this year. I don't know if they're going to maybe do. Well, see, practice starts so early now.
No, I have a question for you.
It's crazy to think that college basketball practice started in September. Like that's
because the game starts so early.
I know. So
think about this. So when Dick Bennett came on, he and Tony Bennett did this too. He stopped the turning the lights off for the intros, he stopped the whole like introducing the players and turning the lights off and doing the spotlight and all that. Do you think Kyle Smith is gonna do the spotlight, turn off the lights thing?
I don't know. He's funny, man. He just he strikes me as the kind of guy that would think that was cool. So
I think he would. That's why I wanted to see what you're thinking. I definitely think he would.
I mean, he's just so I'm telling you,
personality wise, he is in no way similar to Dick Bennett.
No, and not Tony either. There is no. It's funny because he's I want to be Tony Bennett and John Beeline, and it's he definitely does not have the aw shucks, personality of those dudes. It's not. Man, it is not the same. And he, what you see in the, having sat in a room with him for 20 minutes, it's and I know 20 minutes is just 20 minutes, but, what you see on interviews and what you hear and all that stuff, that is legit. The energy, just the holy crap, this is so amazing. All of that is legitimate and it's real and it's super endearing. We don't, there's going to be the inevitable comparisons to Ernie Kent.
Well, did you see the picture of him wearing Anthony Gordon's community college jersey?
He got an Anthony Gordon community college football jersey that he wore out to practice one day. And it's who does that, right? So apparently, obviously he was coaching in San Francisco. He knew the equipment manager at City College down there and scored himself just hilarious, So he is all in on being a Coug, which I love. He still thinks it's the coolest thing in the world that he's coaching at, a Pac-12 school, which I love.
And, obviously his wife is from here. And
there's just
so he's excited about that.
Again, the comparisons between Ernie and him are going to be so frequent just because that's inevitable, right? But, you're going to see him and you're Ernie walked in I'm Ernie fucking Kent and you should bow before me and I'm going to fix this. And you're just okay, I guess, and Kyle Smith is just yo, this is the greatest thing ever. I love this so much. This is so awesome. I love being a Coug. And you're just and it's so genuine. And, we used to joke, right? We'd call Ernie Kent, the head, snake oil salesman, right?
And I think that in Kyle Smith's mind, he's probably ahead of. He's probably this is probably ahead of schedule for him.
Yeah, he is tickled. Listen, Coug fan. I know we talked about this back on that episode, so if people go listen to it, whatever. But it's Coug fan wrote however many 25 articles on how nobody wants this job, and he is absolutely tickled to have this job. He is just are you kidding me? I'm in the fucking Pac-12. This is amazing. It's like, I don't even care like about like the resources or whatever. I've got 8,000 more resources here than I ever had at San Francisco or Columbia. So this is awesome, so you love him, you gotta, it's great. It's awesome. By the way, one thing I want to say, so I don't know if you knew this. I actually, found this out recently. So back again, when we did those episodes and then we kind of put it aside, John Andershek, who's the director of analytics, right? Turns out, so we talked about this before, he was an assistant coach sort of for recruiting purposes during the off season. Well, it turned out he got retained as an assistant coach. So that's like super badass. Like,
yes,
I love the fact that one of our three, so you only get 3 assistants, right, who can actually coach the players. So this is a guy who was coaching, a year ago was coaching at Johns Hopkins University, right? And goes back to Kyle Smith days at Columbia, right? Where where Andershek was a student. And then, for him to follow Smith here, to leave an assistant job, which I know it's Pac-12 and all that stuff, but it's hard for coaches to leave those coaching jobs. He was leaving
the
a
actual
coaching
paid,
job.
like,
right.
like
well, and
paid a living salary. You get a
and
coach.
You legit
like,
get to coach. Like that's, when you are the, whatever his position was supposed to be here, where he was director of analytics / director of basketball ops or whatever, right? You can kind of coach around the fringes, right? But if you do any more than that, it's an NCAA violation and, whatever. So now he's a legit coach and he gets to coach. And that is like a super cool deal for him. Like I'm so excited for him. And not only that, but we have again a full-fledged assistant coach on our staff who is 100% committed to analytics and is the sort of the analytics dude, the analytics brain behind the machine there. And we also have a head coach who values that enough to bring a guy on like that and work through that. So I'm tickled for the like just as tickled as Kyle Smith is to be coaching the Pac-12.
Wait, and then
I'm tickled for this whole thing.
I think you were going to get to his tweet.
Yeah. So there was it was a tweet from actually Jordan Sperber, who is so if you are a college basketball fan and you don't follow Jordan on Twitter, if you're not on Twitter, if you are on Twitter and you don't follow him, you're doing it wrong. You should follow him.
If you're on YouTube, follow
If you're on
YouTube,
you're doing it wrong. You should definitely subscribe to his Hoop Vision channel. He's a guy who is rooted in analytics. He actually won a contest called Stat Geek Idol once upon a time, where basically all these like analytics, college basketball analytics dudes solicited like stories. They basically just said, hey, give us your best, data analysis and we'll judge it. And some of the judges were like, none of these names will mean anything to anybody, but Kevin Pelton was on the list. If you're like, an ESPN person, you may recognize that name. So anyway, there were all these judges that were like super famous in the analytics community. And so he actually won that. Well, then he sort of parlayed that into an actual like assistant coaching job, where he was working with Chris Jans at New Mexico State. And then he eventually kind of stepped out of that. And now he's doing like this kind of like really cool marriage of coaching and analytics where he's looking at data and he's doing it as like an
breaking down offenses.
Yeah, he's like doing it as like an independent dude where he's looking at data, but he's also like breaking down offenses as a coach and is sort of marrying these two things together. So that all brings us back to the tweet that you referenced, which is where he basically took, did this like metric look at, okay, given the history of a program, right? Like when you look at KenPom ranking, where do they typically end up as a program? Which coaches are the most above or below what that program typically is? Number one, okay, so number 2 was Kyle Smith.
Well, okay, number 2.
So hold on,
of coaches that have coached at least 5 years.
Right.
So Chris Beard is number 1.
Yes.
But he's only 2 years in.
But he's only 2 years in.
So Tony Bennett was number 1 for coaches.
That's what I was trying to get to.
Sorry.
You spoiled my surprise.
Well, you were being wrong about it.
I know. I wasn't wrong.
Yes, you were.
Whatever. Anyway. Well, I was trying to get there. So number 2 was Kyle Smith. among coaches with at least 5 years, with the time that he spent at Columbia and the time that he spent in San Francisco. Like, those are programs that have traditionally been, Columbia's traditionally been horrible, like a 300 type team, ranked in the Ken Palm like 300-ish. And then, you've got a team like San Francisco, which was traditionally like in the 150 to 200 range. And he's had his teams consistently above that. So super cool accomplishment for him. And then, of course, no surprise, Tony Bennett's the other one with what he did at WSU and at Virginia. So, yeah, that's like, again, who knows if he can duplicate that here. But I think that's a pretty good proxy of – just the idea of who can quote unquote coach.
You know who looks around number 3?
I don't know. I didn't look at it that close.
Kelvin Sampson.
That sounds about right. Yeah, that sounds about right. That I think this is probably as good of a statistical.
So is WSU just amazing at hiring basketball coaches?
Maybe. Well, mostly, except for the whole Kevin Easton
when they're coming up and they're
Kent
not
thing. Yeah. If you find them young.
Yeah.
And Kyle Smith is relatively young.
Yeah. I mean,
he's not Tony Bennett.
He's young.
He's youngish.
He's young in terms of head coaching years.
Sure.
Yeah. Cause I think, he's
not
he, about
how old
6
is he?
years?
He's not 50 yet, right? Like, isn't he like 49 or 48, something like that?
I think that's about right. I think he's close to 50. He was born in 1969, so he is turning.
So
he turned 50.
Either 50 or almost 50. He turned 50 in August.
He turned 50 in June.
Turned 50.
So.
Yeah.
So he is 50, which is young. Is pretty young for a.
That's relatively
for a high level
young.
basketball coach.
In a career where you can coach into your 60s pretty easily. Like, certainly not old. Certainly not old. So.
Yeah. So and if you're new to the podcast, hi, welcome. We are super stoked about Kyle Smith.
And we love basketball.
So you're gonna hear about it. Maybe we'll split them up. I don't know. We probably won't. We don't have time.
Yeah,
for that.
I don't know. When's our first game? What's the first game? November, like mid-November?
Yeah, November 8th or something.
Yeah, there you go.
But so
we won't kill them with basketball between now and then, though.
Yeah, this will probably be one of the rare times.
But this week made sense.
There's one more thing because Pat Chun was able to hire a basketball coach, and because it's a coach you can actually build some excitement around the analytics and nerd ball, which they should go with. Not the, what did they call it?
Data raid.
Data raid. No.
Nerd ball.
No. Nerd ball.
Nerd ball is perfect.
Yeah. Nerd ball is perfect.
It's perfect. Just don't mess with perfect.
But anyway, so now we have the basketball team, something that's more kind of promotable, something more interesting. And what one thing that they are doing, one that Chun we've seen very much is about tapping into like the all-time greats at WSU.
Yes, he is. Which is like a no-brainer and totally crazy that nobody's really done it before him.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I don't know. Obviously you cannot do it and then be good enough to get hired as the AD at Nebraska, but I don't know.
Dear God, you almost made me spit out my beer, asshole. That was almost on my computer.
But yeah, so part of that is they're bringing Klay Thompson back to Pullman, partially because he can't play for a while.
That helps.
But he's coming back on January 18th when they play Oregon State.
How cool is that?
And they're retiring his jersey, which is pretty badass.
It's like super cool. I hope the place is sold out and just like totally bonkers for Klay.
Yeah.
I don't know if it will be.
I'm going.
Well,
as you know, just in support of the hire, I bought season tickets.
Yeah.
So, I may not make it to very many of those because it's a long drive in the winter. But I'm going to try to get to, at least a few.
That one will be awesome. And Oregon State figures to be, perhaps a little down this year. So that's a good one. So the game's against Oregon State.
Yeah. And there was only three Saturday Pac-12 games. One's UCLA, one's UW, and Oregon State. So obviously they chose the one with probably would have been the least draw anyway. So
Arizona's one. They do play Arizona
on Sunday. I'm talking about Saturday. They probably wanted to do.
Arizona's on Saturday, February 1st.
Are you sure?
But yeah,
at home.
Yes. But that's
okay. Fine, whatever. UW's
wrong,
on
Craig.
UW's on Sunday. That's
yes.
I mixed
UW
those
is Sunday
two.
the following.
But anyway, Arizona. Does that fucking ruin my point? No.
No.
Arizona, like definitely a better draw than Oregon State. Anyway.
Yes.
So fuck you, Jeff.
That is, you are correct. If you're trying to get butts in the seats, Oregon State's a good one to play. And again, you might actually look. We don't know a whole lot, so it's like we're sort of guessing. But I think probably Oregon State is a higher probability for a win than say Arizona
you want it to be the all happy
or
day.
UCLA.
The all happy day. Yeah. Well, I don't know how good are any of the teams good? I don't know. Probably not.
They might all be terrible.
Yeah, like at home, you probably have a decent shot of beating any team in the Pac-12 if your team is not coached by Ernie Kent. So
I will say, if Bill Moose was still in charge, we probably would have had like the jersey retirement on December 21st against Incarnate Word.
Yeah,
like it would have been something like that.
Oh, yeah.
Come on down right before Christmas. Incarnate Word.
He wouldn't even have done it, though, either.
No, he wouldn't have. He just would have been like, I'm riding my tractor.
Dude, Clay's got some money. Let's get some money from him, man. He just signed a big-ass contract.
Yeah, but I mean, like, that's the thing. Like, that's with Chun, it's like, yes, Clay has money. Yes, this is probably a brazen attempt to flatter Clay. And is it going to work? Probably. Like that's the thing. Like, that's what all of this is. Like,
also, like, Clay is always
Clay's under no illusions that they want his money, but it's like, come on. Like, this is how the game is played.
Does he have control of the money, or does Dad have control of them?
I know. Michael, I'm sure, is going to have to approve any payments, but I mean, it's.
But Clay is obviously.
Chun gets it, and we've obviously let this. We obviously have screwed that up for the better part of 3 or 4 decades. Once really pro sports salaries exploded, Chun really gets the fact that it's a good idea. It's a good idea to keep your rich alumni. It's close to the program.
It's not. Yeah, it's not. It's not a coincidence that you've just seen alumni around more. It's not a coincidence.
No, it's not a coincidence at all.
Purpose. Yeah, and the funny thing is, like it didn't, like, I think for the students that were there when Clay played, but like the alumni that like watched on TV, I don't know. You remember writing about this? Like, Clay was not that. Like, beloved?
No, he wasn't.
Like, there was all that, like, he's a pony face.
Clay Pouts, he's a pony face.
Like, and I think part of it was because they didn't go to the tournament, but whatever.
No, that's like 100% of it.
But it's
like not even part of it. That's all of it.
But it's like, well, I mean, he was playing with, like, other dudes. Like,
he was the best player to ever play on our campus, and it's not even debatable.
Yeah,
like it's not even debatable.
Well,
like,
and
you
it
can't.
And then because he's been so successful, been so successful in the NBA, now like every Coug is like,
we love him so much.
I mean, we see what's happening.
I always loved Clay. I always thought he had the prettiest jumper.
Yeah,
like I want to slap every one of those people.
Yeah, I know, but yeah, so now it's like. Now, because he's been so successful in the NBA, he's so loved, and like he's just loved beyond WSU people. He's got his own following, and so which we're very familiar with now, and with Gardner Minshew.
Yeah, well, I for one am thankful because
I think it's great.
I haven't had the Sonics for a decade, and Clay gives me a great
reason to follow the NBA,
to be a fan. Like I can be a fan of, and I know a lot of people, I don't like Golden State, whatever. No, like I love Golden State because they've got Clay. So, and they're on TV like twice a week, every week. So
yeah, exactly.
No, I'm totally okay with being a front running fanboy with the Golden State Warriors. I make no apologies for that whatsoever.
Yep, it's fun. Yeah, go Clay.
Go Clay. And go to Pullman on January 18th, people.
Yeah, it should be fun, man. Like just don't worry about it. The pass will be fine. It'll be clear.
Yeah, I'm sure there won't be any problems.
Yeah, Snoqualmie is easy. Easy.
Just get your Subaru Outback.
Yeah,
drive over the mountains.
Well, the funny thing is now I know I can go to the I was more confident in buying basketball tickets because we bought an all-wheel drive RAV4.
All-wheel drive vehicle.
Yeah, so we have an all-wheel drive vehicle now. So,
and you haven't driven it in the snow yet. Let me tell you. So we have the Outback, right? So that's why I said that. Like when we got that, I was like, how big of a difference can the all-wheel drive make? And then it snowed, and then I was like, holy shit, this is amazing. The thing.
You have to have the fear put into you by driving a bad car that's bad in the snow.
Yes.
And then you still have those tendencies.
Especially something that's like rear wheel drive or something.
Yeah. You have those like scary tendencies when you get in the snow, and then you're still driving like that, but you have the all-wheel drive. So, so like there's no problems. The problem is like people get all-wheel drive and they're like, I am invincible now.
Yeah, that is true. That's the worst. That's actually the worst. So you go from it being like the best to the worst in like a second.
Yeah, like nothing is good to drive in the snow.
No,
never drive in the snow.
That is true.
But
if you have to.
But if you know how to drive in the snow, and all-wheel drive just makes it so much better.
That is true.
It does. It really does.
100% true.
Like you just feel a lot better.
All right,
so yeah.
Are we done?
I think we're done. We're talking about all-wheel drive vehicles.
We're talking about all-wheel drive vehicles. This is what we've become. People should subscribe.
Yeah, you should subscribe.
Yeah, and rate us 5 stars if you feel like it, because that'll help people find us.
And I know you heard some F-bombs. We are rated E for explicit.
If you hate us, send us a strongly worded email instead of leaving us a bad review. We'd appreciate that.
That's at podcastversuseveryone@gmail.com.
That's right.
It's we've only got a few guys that email us occasionally on there. Otherwise, you know who you are.
And we appreciate those.
And we appreciate those emails.
We love the feedback.
Just do that and subscribe and rate us, and please do that because then more people can find us and listen to us.
And also find the Kook Center Hour.
Yeah, the Kook Center Hour is on our feed. You can get that every week as well.
That's right. So that's good stuff.
All right. So enjoy your bye week, Jeff, and go Cougs.
Go Cougs.